Regina King doesn't speak publicly unless it truly matters. So when she recently paused, took a breath, and thanked two very unexpected people by name, it stopped a lot of listeners in their tracks. Because this wasn't a press moment or a soundbite, it was something far more personal. And behind that moment was a story about friendship, quiet support, and a chapter of her son's life many people never knew about. For years, Regina King kept her private world carefully guarded. Her son, Ian Alexander Jr., lived largely outside the spotlight, despite being raised by one of Hollywood's most respected actresses. That's why it came as a surprise when Regina revealed that Ian had formed a close friendship with Malia and Sasha Obama, a connection that happened quietly, without headlines or cameras. At first, she didn't even realize who they were. She recalls hearing Ian mention a girl named Sasha coming over for dinner and thinking nothing of it. It wasn't until later that she realized her son had casually befriended the daughters of a former US president. But to Ian, titles didn't matter. These were just people he connected with. That detail says a lot about who Ian was. Friends described him as warm, creative, and deeply curious about the world. When Malia and Sasha moved to Los Angeles and began building lives outside the White House, Ian became one of the first people they genuinely connected with. There was no agenda, no celebrity networking, just young adults navigating life, creativity, and independence together. Regina later shared that those friendships reflected exactly the kind of person her son was: open, grounded, and unpretentious. But that wasn't the part that moved her the most. What stayed with Regina was what that friendship represented during some of Ian's most formative years. As a mother, she watched her son build relationships on his own terms, choosing people who saw him for who he was, not who his parent was. And when Regina recently spoke about those connections publicly, her voice softened. She thanked Malia and Sasha not for publicity, but for being there, for being kind, for being real friends to her son in moments that mattered more than anyone realized at the time. But the story doesn't stop there. When Regina spoke on the Obama family's podcast, Michelle Obama herself added something that quietly changed the tone of the conversation. She confirmed that Ian was genuinely one of the first close friends her daughters made in Los Angeles. Not acquaintances, not industry contacts, friends. That detail reframed everything. It showed that this wasn't a one-sided admiration or coincidence. It was mutual. And for Regina, hearing that validated something deeply personal, that her son left a meaningful impression on the people around him. Of course, the conversation carried an unavoidable weight. Ian passed away in 2022, a loss that shook Regina's world. Since then, she has been careful about how she speaks about him publicly. She doesn't sensationalize the pain. She doesn't dwell on speculation. Instead, she focuses on memory, love, and honoring who he was. That's why, when she thanked Malia and Sasha, it wasn't framed around tragedy. It was framed around gratitude. Gratitude that her son experienced genuine friendship. Gratitude that he was loved. Gratitude that his life, though too short, was full of real connection. In the years since Ian's passing, Regina has found quiet ways to keep his spirit alive. One of those has been a creative project inspired by him, something she described as a way to continue making memories with her son, even now. Rather than retreating from the world, she's chosen to channel her grief into purpose. And moments like this, speaking openly about Ian's friendships, are part of that process. They aren't meant to reopen wounds, they're meant to honor truth. What makes this story resonate so deeply is how human it is. Strip away the fame, the politics, the Hollywood status, and what's left is a mother recognizing the people who mattered to her child. It's about how friendships can shape a person quietly, without headlines. And it's about how, long after someone is gone, those connections still echo in ways that bring comfort. In the end, Regina King's message wasn't complicated. She wasn't revealing secrets or stirring controversy. She was simply saying thank you. Thank you to two young women who showed her son kindness. Thank you for shared meals, conversations, laughter, and time. And in doing so, she reminded everyone listening that legacy isn't always built through awards or fame. Sometimes it's built through the way we show up for each other and the way we're remembered by those who truly knew us. And maybe that's the part that lingers the most. Because long after the headlines fade, it's those quiet friendships that tell the real story.